They do not have the developmental ability to take in all the pieces and put it together. That'll be when they painfully go,
I have actually seen children do that.
They don't have the pieces. Conceptual thinking begins at a strong 5, week 6. So our son, when he first was seen for his first evaluation, the developmentalist said, "So tell me about your son." And I went, "Oh my gosh, good Lord, he was there helping me." Because I thought we had a 2-year-old for 7 years. And he said, "Oh, you probably did." Because he came in processing 3 pieces of information. Somewhere along the way, his environment bumped him up to 3, but he was at a 2-year-old age for 7 years. And you know, when you have a 2-year-old and do a sit-down striker or a tantrum, you can pick them up and whisk them out of the room. But when they're 9 years old and they sit down in the middle of the entrances in the sanctuary, and you can't pick them up and move them anymore, and they do a 2-year-old tantrum,
It's not so pretty.
it's not fun. But I can tell you, he was acting appropriately for his developmental age. He was just trapped in the 9-year-old body with a 2-year-old developmental age. When you have a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, how do you talk to them? Do you hear me? You get right in their face, you make sure they're looking at your eyes, and you talk in short words. Well, if you have a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, and they're processing the amount of a 4 or 5-year-old, and they're all day long sitting in a 7th grade classroom, and the teacher's up there going, "You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this," and they're processing, "Do you hear me?" They're missing a whole bunch, and they're going to act immature because they're processing on the level of a 4 or 5-year-old. And so then you're going to have this child sitting all day for 7 hours in a classroom, and they're going to fidget, and they're going to be uncomfortable, and they're not going to be able to sit still, and maybe the tags are bothering them, and maybe their sock seam is wrong, and so they're like going crazy, and maybe they're smelling the slot marker, and it's driving them crazy, and maybe they're hearing the airplane 30,000
She's
feet.
describing my son.
How do we expect them to sit in that classroom for 7 hours a day when all of that overload is bombarding their system?
And all of this is typically seen as behavior.
May I suggest, anyone here have a 4 or 5-year-old? How would you get that child to sit in a classroom for 7 hours a day? May I offer a suggestion? Drug them. And that's what we have. In North America, we have a continent of people giving their children medication for behaving exactly what is appropriate for their developmental age.
That's
In
what Ritalin
order for them to attend and sit still. I would like to offer, let's get their auditory processing up, get their developmental age up so they can do it naturally and normally.
I had one child on program for 5 months, went just initially battled, worked with the program, worked with auditory processing, huge problem, in the classroom setting, impulsive, unfocused, distractible. Within 5 months, that had jumped 2 years of development, huge. Everybody was noticing how well focused he was, less impulsive, more socially mature. It was a huge difference. And this was just a typical kid with probably like an ABD label, if it would have been labeled.
The majority of children with focus issues are low processing issues.
ADHD, ABD.
The majority of children with behavior issues, low processing. They're behaving like their developmental age, but they're in an older body. With all due respect to everyone in the community of science and education, I do not believe in medicine. I do not believe there is such a thing as mental retardation. I refuse to believe that. I believe it's a case of children not even accessing their intelligence yet. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of children with the label of Down syndrome. Every single one of them but one, well, one has come in processing 5 pieces of information. 2 or 3 have come in processing 4 pieces of information. Everyone else has come in processing 3 or less. It doesn't matter what their age is. If you don't even enter into conceptual thinking and reasoning until you are able to do a 5, how can we even access intelligence because you're not even there to access it? Every child I've ever worked with, as their processing improves, their intelligence goes along with it. Our son went in processing 3. Guess what? His function and ability was a 3-year-old's. Now, he knew a few things more because of living life and being broadly trained. But when he started doing a 4, his function improved tremendously. When he could do a 5, there was a huge spurt in his improvement. When he began doing 6, he could stay home alone and ride his bike in the community by himself because he had the processing ability to come to a stop street, stop, know to look both ways, know he had to cross and get to the other side. That requires auditory processing ability sequentially. Our children with labels are considered retarded, low IQ, low functioning, but they're being assessed before they ever are developmentally to the place of even having that. So the most important thing for our kids with labels is to get their processing up. And our kids with Down syndrome often are actually processing 1 level higher than what they test, just because they don't do performance well. And so you can spend all your time and you can buy every phonics program in the world and you can try to teach your child phonics, but if they're not processing 5 pieces of information, strong 5, weak 6, you're wasting your time. You can teach your child rote things. Teach them to do this. Teach them to do this. You know, a lot of the evaluations that are out there are check sheets. Can they do this? Can they do this? Can they do this? Can they do this? It's skill-based. Traditional way of looking at things is skill-based.
And then you have to teach the child everything. Because he's not going to transfer what he's learned here over into this situation. Right. Bring up the processing, he will be able to come to a logical conclusion, and he will be able to learn from this and then take it and carry it over into other situations in his life. And that doesn't just apply to children with Down syndrome, that applies to children with low auditory processing.
And so you can beat yourself up and spend all your time and effort teaching each skill, which, like Sylvia said, will not transfer. Or you can spend your time and attention getting your processing to the next level, and all of those skills that are in that 1-year developmental cycle automatically comes. I'd rather work on getting the processing up than teaching some rote skills. You know, they were still teaching my son how to wash maps at age 12 when we took him out of school and homeschooled. Huge. How does this translate to behavior often with the young ones? Go upstairs, get your shoes and socks, come on back downstairs, meet me at the door, we're leaving. The child processes go upstairs. And then what? All of a sudden realize they're not here. So you go upstairs, and they're playing.
And he thinks he did what you told him.
Oh, what are you doing? I told you. And he's like, well, you go upstairs, and what else am I supposed to be doing? They're playing. With an older child, students, get your math book out. Turn to page 25, do problems 1 through 10 at the bottom of the page.
And then what are these kids doing? They didn't get it, so they're looking at their neighbors. And then what happens? They get